I remember the sound first, the click of the lock sliding into place behind us, the silence of the house swallowing us. Ho! And then her voice. Low, steady, not a whisper, not an accident. They want you dead before the year ends. I froze. My wife, my mute wife, the one my mother handpicked, the one paraded in front of family and guests as a perfect, obedient bride, wasn't mute at all. She stood in her wedding dress, veil tossed, aside, her eyes sharp with truth I wasn't supposed to know. I didn't breathe, didn't move. The silence was heavier than a scream. It started with my mother. Her smile was always sharp, enough to cut glass, her hand soft, enough to strangle. She wanted an heir she could control, a son who bowed his head, a wife who bowed lower. I was a pawn in her empire. The lavish wedding wasn't for me. It was a coronation for her. She chose the bride, sold the story of a mute wife as some holy blessing. A woman who couldn't argue, couldn't expose secrets. But behind the performance was something else, a plan. She whispered to her allies that I was weak, that my father's wealth, my inheritance, would return to her hands soon enough, that I was too naive to notice the poison being poured into my life. I should have seen it earlier. The way my wine was always poured for me, never from the same bottle. The sudden dizziness after dinners, the quiet laughter in the corridors when I stumbled, when my hand shook signing documents. My bride was supposed to be the final lock on my cage, silent, obedient, decorative, a perfect accessory to the son who wouldn't live long enough to fight back. But they miscalculated. She wasn't mute and she wasn't loyal to them. That first night, after the shock settled, she told me everything. My mother's plot, the allies circling like vultures, the doses of poison measured to mimic weakness. I asked her why she was telling me. She said simply, because if you die, I die too. That was enough. So I played the fool. I drank the wine. I let my hands shake. I let my mother's allies smirk. When they thought I wasn't looking, I stumbled at the right times, fell silent at the right moments. But every drop of wine, every plate of food, I switched. Them when no one watched. A servant's clumsy mistake here, a distracted toast. There, slowly, quietly, the poison meant for me found its way into their veins. My bride, my supposed mute wife, was the knife I kept hidden. She whispered names, dates, plans. Every night she gave me the enemy's map, and every morning I pretended to be weaker. Then came the night of the banquet. My mother stood at the head of the table, dripping in jewels, her voice carrying like a queen's. She announced to her guests that her son, the fragile, stumbling heir, would be signing over full control of the estate to her. For his own protection, she said, I signed. My hand shook like a dying man's. The guests laughed, glasses raised. My mother's eyes burned with triumph. And when the feast began, every dish was served in my honor, every toast made in my health. I ate slowly. I drank deeply. I let the room believe I was finished. By midnight, I collapsed to the floor. Gasps, panic. My mother smiled wide and victorious. Take him to his chambers. She ordered. He won't rise again. The guest muttered, nodded. The heir was finished. The empire belonged to her. But the next morning, it wasn't me who failed to rise. It was the guests. One by one, sickened, writhing. The poison, carefully stored in the cellar wine, switched weeks ago, poured only into their glasses. By noon, half of them were dead. The others clawed at their throats, begging for help that never came. And my mother, she stood frozen as I entered the hall, alive, steady, not weak at all. Her face drained to blood when she saw me standing unbroken. When she realized coughing, dying men around her weren't accidents. They were sacrifices. She tried to speak, to command, to call me her son again, but her voice cracked when I approached. You want an heir you could control, I said. My tone was calm, almost gentle. You wanted a wife who wouldn't speak. You want a son who would die quietly. I leaned close enough for her to hear. The truth. I gave you silence, but not obedience. I didn't need to raise my hand. She collapsed on her own, choking, her lips foaming from the wine she'd toasted with. She had drunk deeper than anyone. My bride stood at the door, watching. She said nothing. She didn't need to. When it was over, the hall was quiet. My mother sprawled among her allies, her crown of jewels glinting in the candlelight, her empire crumbling. With her last breath, I sat in her chair. I poured myself a glass of untainted wine, and I finally let myself breathe. Betrayal is never loud. It whispers. It smiles. It pours your glass for you. But revenge is patient, and when it speaks, it doesn't need to raise its voice.